When I uploaded my last video, I honestly didn't expect anyone to take notice of the small marks on the inside of my left arm in one clip, but you're all much more observant than I had expected, and I was met with floods of messages of support and concern and general questions about my well-being and situation. I've been avoiding making this video for about 3 years because, to be honest, it is the one thing that I don't talk about. Usually I'm an open book and I will answer any question that anyone asks me. I never shut the fuck up, but self-harm is something I've struggled with for a massive portion of my teenage life, and it makes me uncomfortable to talk about, but I have been urged by so many people who find themselves in similar difficult situations to discuss it, and so I'm going to. I don't think I need to give a content warning for this video. If you are easily disturbed or upset by me or anyone talking about self-harm, about feelings of depression or self-loathing, please don't watch this video. It's not worth it. If you don't want to hear me talking about my experiences because you think it might be too intense, skip to this part of the video and you will only see the bit where I'm talking about coping mechanisms and advice for people who want help, and you don't have to listen to anything that might be too upsetting. Okay, enough waffle. Let's talk. When I first got to secondary school, I had never really had any proper friends. I sort of hung around people in primary school, but they mostly just tolerated me rather than actually wanting me there. When I got into year 7 and I was at this new school and it felt like this big step up, I essentially attached myself to a group of girls. They, again, tolerated me for the most part, and what ended up happening was a very, very toxic dynamic in that group. I have a whole video about that as well, which I will link down in that bit so that I don't have to repeat myself. But essentially, when I got to year 9 and I finally actually made my first proper best friend, I was overwhelmed with finally not actually feeling lonely anymore. And as wonderful as it was to meet that person that was my best friend and to be introduced to her friends, they were a toxic group of people in a different way. They didn't bully me like the first group of people I'd been friends with had, but they were the type of people who had black and white tumblers and would talk about how sad they were in a way that was a very unhealthy romanticization of mental illness rather than an actual open discussion about mental illness. Essentially, I started hurting myself because I saw them doing it, and I was so horribly desperate to fit in, and I was so excited at actually having people to sit with at lunchtime and people who I could talk to in my classes that I pretty much would do anything so that I felt like I was part of their group. And that started off with me hurting myself in a very mild way. I won't explain how, but it wasn't the most extreme. It was just a way for me to get attention from these people and for them to understand that I was one of them, which is so unbelievably fucked up to say, but that's just what happened. Of course, I would never condone this behaviour now. I was very, very young, I was very lonely, I was deeply unhappy with myself, and it didn't feel like such a big deal. 6 years down the line, when I've got noticeable scars on my arms that catch people's attention all the time, I wish I could go back and tell myself that any group of friends that make you feel like you have to hurt yourself to fit in is not a group of friends that you want to be a part of. Even though I am still in contact with those people and I love them dearly and I am so grateful to them for giving me my first friendship, because I really had never experienced it before, and they were funny and bright and I did have some amazing times with them, I was not happy and I thought it was a good idea. I thought it would all be fine. What started off as some tiny scratches on my wrist became something that I really couldn't control. I would rely on hurting myself when I was frustrated or upset or stressed in any way it became a solution for when my brain wouldn't stop. The kind of mental illness that I seem to have is a sort of cyclical thinking that I can't escape from. I end up just thinking the same things over and over again until I genuinely feel like I'm going crazy. And to be able to do something to myself that would cause my whole brain to shut down, because obviously our bodies are built to survive. If you are hurt, all of your attention goes on to that. Your whole body, your brain, your blood, everything becomes focused on fixing this injury, and those couple of minutes of not having to think were worth the weeks and weeks of that cut hurting and making people give me weird looks and rubbing against my clothes. And that just became my cycle. It got so bad to the point where every single morning I had to go to the school nurse to get her to bandage my entire arm because it was covered in cuts. I didn't realise how big of a deal it was until I saw my parents' reaction when they found out. It happened because my mum just happened to see some cuts on my arm. I got a royal telling off, of course. I can only imagine how horrifying it must have been for my mum to realise that this person that she had grown inside of her body and looked after and nurtured for 14 years was now inflicting pain on themselves and scarring their body. I don't blame her at all for the way that she screamed at me that day, because I fully deserved it, and I can only apologise for the stress that I put her through. But after that started a whole new chapter of counselling. At one point I was seeing 3 different counsellors every week. I was seeing a school counsellor, an out-of-school counsellor, and a homeopath who basically prescribed me some natural remedies to try and up some of the serotonin in my brain, because while I don't think I was depressed, I was definitely suffering from real low mood, real anxiety and low self-esteem, and generally being quite deeply unhappy. It was then that I really started to view it as an addiction. I don't think it's an addiction for everyone. I can't speak for everyone who's ever experienced self-harm, but for me, I was addicted to the adrenaline rush that I got, to the feeling of being in control, to knowing that it was me hurting myself rather than the people at school or the universe or everything else that I felt was against me. I felt like I couldn't really get out of this cycle of relapsing, lasting a couple of weeks and then relapsing again. Gradually it got better, and I'm now at a point where relapsing is a very, very rare occasion for me. It really takes a proper dip in my mood and an actual event for me to feel like that's something that I need to do. I do have a really big scar on my arm from a couple months ago when I really upset a friend and felt the need to punish myself. Now, the way that I managed to get out of that cycle was forming an appreciation for my body, exercising, because that adrenaline rush that I got from hurting myself, that can be replicated if you go for a very intense jog, or you lift weights, or you do yoga. Anything that actually makes you move your body and get you out of your head, that will simulate the same feeling that self-harm might give you. Practicing self-love, practicing affirmations. If you tell yourself that you like yourself every single morning, give it a couple months and you'll start to believe it. Our brains are surprisingly easy to trick, and basically if you tell yourself something enough times, you'll start to think it's true. Talking to my friends, using art rather than pain to express my frustration, deleting that horrible toxic Tumblr blog where I would look at skinny white girls who were sad and thought it was cool, because that's just a whole fucking mess that no one needs. It was when I started thinking of my body as a separate entity from my mind that things really started to change. Because if my mind was feeling bad, why should my body be the thing that took the blame and took the anger from that? If my mind was feeling bad, I needed to figure out why and how I could fix it, and not destroy myself on the outside because I felt destroyed on the inside. I'm incredibly lucky to have the body that I do. I'm learning to love it, and I'm now in a much better place where I see how ungrateful it was for me to be hurting something that was perfectly healthy when there are tons of people who don't have that and are born in a body that doesn't work as well as mine does. And I'm very aware of how stupid it was. I was very young and I didn't realise, and now I'm in a much better place where I can see things more objectively. If you are finding yourself in a similar situation to me, I want you to know that I understand. I know how lonely and difficult and dark this addiction and this problem is. I know how difficult it is to talk about it, and that you don't want anyone to freak out at you or scream at you. I also want you to know that there are thousands of things that you should be doing instead, like figuring out what your passion is, or going outside and noticing that we don't know what's out there, and the fact that we're even here is bonkers crazy, or listening to a new album that you might fall in love with, or talking to someone that you've never spoken to before, or learning a language, or collecting vinyls, or anything. There is so much for you to do right now and in the next however many years, and this dark patch is just a patch. If you're in school, I know and I can empathise so strongly with how shit school is. Waking up too early for your body, going to a place you don't want to go to learn about subjects you don't enjoy, around people that scare and intimidate you. Doing that 5 days a week takes real fucking guts, and I can understand how frustrating it is. Being a young person in the world right now is not easy, and while it might feel like it's a quick way of getting some relief to get frustration out, it's not worth it, because those 3 minutes of your brain focusing on the fact that you're bleeding is not worth the damage that you're doing to your body, the way that you're thinning out your skin, the way that it's going to hurt for weeks on end, and it's going to heal slowly, and it might even get infected. It's just not worth it. There is so much other stuff that you can do to get the relief that you want. I'm going to leave some links down below of like very practical things that you can do. I know that some people scribble with pens, some people use elastic bands and flick them against their wrist because it kind of emulates the same feeling, so you can get some relief out of that. There's so much stuff that you can try, and something is going to work, I promise. And even if it doesn't, there are people that care about you, and you're worth much more than you give yourself credit for. Self-harm is horrible, and it's really difficult, and it makes me really sad that I put myself through it and that other people put themselves through it. I'm lucky enough to have an amazing support system and to be recovering. Even with the little bumps in the road, I'm always on my way up, and I'm not ashamed of the scars on my arm, because they are a reminder that I was really low and now I'm not anymore. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to contact me. All of my social media is below as well. I will also be replying to every single comment on this video. I know that often I don't get a chance to, but this one is an exception because I need to talk to you guys about this. Thank you for watching. If this video made you angry, I understand and I get it. It makes me angry too. And I will see you in a couple of days with something much more cheerful. Cool. Okay. That was 3 years in the making.